So, first of all, could you talk a bit about yourself? Like, where were you born?
I was born in Zimbabwe, in southern Africa, and my family moved quite a lot because of my father's business. And so growing up, I lived in a number of different countries. And so growing up, I'd always move from one place to another. But wherever we would go, whichever country we were in, whichever country we were visiting, my father always made sure that we would go to Mass. And that we would say our prayers and still be raised in the faith. The most significant influence for me was when we lived in Saudi Arabia, and I lived there for a couple of years, because there, obviously, to practice the faith is illegal. And so to practice our faith, we had to do so in secret and in hiding. And so it meant that for Mass, we'd still have Mass every week, but we'd have to move from house to house to a different location so that we never drew the attention of the authorities as to what we were doing or where we were. And that for me at the time was exciting, because being a young boy, the idea of being in secret and in hiding was fun, because it sounded like an adventure. And it was only when I became much older that I realized what my parents had actually sacrificed, what they were willing to risk, which in their case was imprisonment or deportation for practicing the faith. And so when I became older, I recognized what risks they had taken for the faith, what risks they had taken on behalf of my sister and I so that we could be raised in the faith. And it was because of that I wanted to dedicate my life to something that I believe truly mattered. I wanted to dedicate my life to the faith. I wanted to be able to live my life for something that I was also willing to die for.
While being a young teenager like us, did you ever have any doubts towards religion and or to God?
The first time I really thought about priesthood when I was 14 years old, and it was at school here, and we used to have Mass before school, and I would go to Mass, and seeing the priest and seeing the Mass, that's what first inspired me to actually seek out priesthood. But then as I became a little older, like through years 9, 10, 11, I started to lose all interest in the idea of priesthood, and I even battled quite a lot with my own faith. And it was difficult for me at the time, because there were a lot of questions that I had. There were a lot of emotions that I had about the faith that I couldn't quite resolve. And so for me, it became very difficult at that point. One thing that sustained me in that was simply the fact that, one, I was at Amara school, and so the brothers were around us, and they would always encourage us in the faith anyway. And also because of my family. Obviously, my father wasn't going to allow me not to go to Mass just because I didn't want to. I still had to go to Mass and so forth. And so because of that, I was just sustained even through all those doubts that I had. But then as I became a little bit older, in my early 20s, I regained my love of the faith again. And it was then that I started thinking about priesthood again, mainly because of what I was feeling myself, but also other people around me were encouraging me to seek out priesthood, even though they didn't know that's what I was thinking at the time.
Do you ever sometimes think of your work as a vocation, or do you have a different state of mind when you take on your daily work?
I suppose I've never really seen the priesthood as simply work or a job, because it's something that demands everything that I am. My entire self has to go into who I am as a priest, because it's not simply something that's added onto me. It's someone who, by the grace of God, I've become. And so everything that I am has to be given over to my vocation. And so it's difficult for me to even see it as a job, because it's not something that has set hours or set days of the week. It's something that demands my entire day and my entire self.